There's too much information. There's too much data, and there's too much to talk about to fit all this into live stream. So what I think I'm going to do is do another live stream tomorrow night with part 2 of The Lands Beyond. I think that's the only thing that I'm going to be able to do for all this to make sense. Okay, so hopefully I could get it all done. I just don't think so. Time constraints are gonna hurt us. I also have something else to talk about tomorrow night that I think all of you guys are going to be very, very interested in. So let's get going. Let's start. So as you can see on the screen, what you should see on the screen right now is me in the bottom left corner, and right above that you should see a black screen that says The Lands Beyond. That's what we should be looking at right now. Okay? We're going to get started. Here we go. We're going to talk tonight about a place called Hyperborea, and I don't know if we're going to necessarily get to that tonight, but it is going to be on the agenda for this live stream. Hyperborea. The itinerary for tonight, what we're going to focus on, these are all the topics that we're going to get to tonight. What does our Earth really look like? We don't know what our Earth looks like. I can tell you that right now. The masses don't know it, and we're going to talk about why the masses don't know it too. What is Hyperborea? We're going to talk about Hyperborea. What is the moon? How is it formed? Contrary to popular belief, the moon is not a rock in outer space, so we're going to talk about that. What image is on the moon, and how was that formed? We're going to talk about that too. We're going to talk about NASA and their multi-trillion-dollar lies and Photoshop skills. We're going to talk about that. What is Lemuria? Sorry, I can't speak. I'm still flustered from this whole thing. What is Lemuria? Where is it located? And I can see now that the text is cut off down there. I see it. That's okay. I'm going to tell you what it says anyway. What is the Prague clock? And what does it tell us? We're going to talk about the ice wall. We're going to talk about magnetic north and true north. What's the difference between those two? We're going to talk about God's clock. What exactly does that mean? We're going to talk about the vortex opening, the real reason for climate change, the book of Enoch, and the 4 quarters of our realm, and also what happens next. What are we anticipating to happen as this goes forward? First of all, there's going to be one very, very important thing that you have to do before I even get started tonight. And if you don't do this, you're going to be very confused for this entire live stream, this entire presentation. You have to forget every single model of the Earth that you've ever known. Forget about the globe, forget about flat Earth, forget about everything. Clear your mind completely. At first, this is going to not make a lot of sense, but I promise you by the time we get to the end, it's not only going to make sense, it's going to make a lot of sense. And by the time we get to tomorrow night, I think you're just changing some color because it's driving me nuts. There we go. By the time we get to tomorrow night, it will make sense. So keep your mind open. Let's clear your entire mechanism. Everything that's in your mind, get it out of there. Let's start over tonight. We're going to start very simple, and then we're going to work our way up. If you are one of the type of people that just simply can't get your mind around flat Earth or the lands beyond or anything, on those talking points, then you're going to have a hard time with this tonight. Okay? First of all, we're going to talk about the first topic in the itinerary that I put together. We're going to talk about what our Earth really looks like. Okay? A very, very basic graphic is on your screen right now. And that is basically what our Earth looks like. It is a flat plane. Think of a dinner plate, so to speak. It is flat and it is also round. And over the top of it is a dome. There is a dome over the top of it. It's referred to as, in the Bible, the celestial dome. The dome is also called the firmament. You've heard that quite a few times before, not only from me, but from other people who are in the flat earth community. And you've also heard it many times mentioned and referenced in the Bible. Okay, so the firmament, when we talk about the firmament, what we're talking about is that dome that goes over our flat plane. So the graphic you see on the screen right now, very basic, flat plane, the white being the land and the water of the earth, and the thin line going over the top of it gets cut off there a little bit in the center, but the thin line going over the top of it is your dome, is your celestial dome, also known as the firmament. Okay? There is a vortex opening, as you can see on where the red arrow is pointing. There is a vortex opening in our greater realm's central core. This place is referred to as Rupus Nigrum, which we'll talk about a little later too. This opening is akin to a central clock dial. It's fixed, it does not move, and everything else in our world rotates around it. Everything else moves except the vortex opening. We're going to talk about that in greater detail as we go forward. We talked about the greater realm. I understand you guys probably don't know what the greater realm is yet, but again, at the end of tonight, you will. So let's just take these things one thing at a time, and I think it'll make a lot more sense to you at the end. So far we're on a flat plane. We have a dome over our heads, and we have an opening in the middle of the flat plane, the very middle of the flat plane. I know you can't see the text, but I'm going to read you what it says. We live in an electromagnetic terrarium. The graphic that was now updated, you could see a powder blue circle there. What you're looking at is called the known world, and the larger section is called the realm. That's our entire realm. That's our overall realm. We live in the blue part. We live in the circular blue part of this greater realm. And the whole thing is basically like a terrarium, just like any other terrarium that you guys have probably all experienced in the past. Our realm is an electromagnetic terrarium. We're going to talk about that a little bit more in detail too as we get going. Now, underneath our greater realm, our Earth, is some sort of electromagnetic source. We don't know exactly what it is. It could be rock, it could be a coil, just like what's displayed in the graphic there where the red arrow is. It could be something else that's neither rock nor coil. It could be some sort of metal. It's something, and it's something very, very strong, and it causes our world to operate the way that we know it. This is what we live on. We don't know exactly what that is underneath our Earth, but it's something. And it's something that causes every single thing in nature to operate how it operates. From the central vortex, as you can see where the red arrow is on the screen now, there is some sort of enormous force of radiation that comes from the central opening in our greater realm and is emitted upwards. Again, it's possible that this radiation is some form of X-rays. We're going to talk a lot about X-rays tonight. But this emission from the central vortex is vital to life on Earth. Crystalline structures reflect X-rays. This is from a gentleman known as Lawrence Bragg. The firmament that we talked about before, the celestial dome, is made of some sort of crystalline material. So what we have protecting us over the Earth is basically a form of crystal. Now, the reason that we're mentioning crystal right now in conjunction with the firmament that's over our heads is because that radiation emission that comes from our central vortex, those rays and that emission gets shot upwards. And as you're going to see from the next graph, once we get to the next slide, X-rays, when they hit an object like crystal, they are reflected back down from the crystal. Let me show you that right now. This is Bragg's law, the gentleman that I spoke about on the previous slide. When X-rays get shot at a crystal-like substance, they reflect. Okay, and this is going to be very, very important for later in the presentation tonight. So what we're looking at so far is, again, let me go back, a flat plane, right? Within that flat plane is a central opening. From that central opening, there is some sort of radiation that's emitted from it. And more than likely, based on what we know so far, and based on what we're going to talk about the rest of the night, that emission is in some form of X-ray, okay? When that emission comes up, you can see it hits the firmament up above and bounces back down, okay? That is from Lawrence Bragg. You can look up Lawrence Bragg in your own time. Here's just a little graphic, from Bragg's law on and how X-rays reflect off of a crystalline lattice surface, okay? By the way, before we go any further tonight, I want to give a big shout out to Ewar. Ewar Anand put together just about almost all of the material that you are seeing tonight. I am simply passing it on to you in my own words. Another one that we want to talk about tonight is Sturgios. When we see a lot of the maps that come into this live later on tonight, I think you're going to see that Sturgios had a good part in putting those maps together. So we're going to talk about that tonight too. But big shout out to those two guys, because without those two, we wouldn't have a presentation tonight, and most people would be completely confused as to what's going on in terms of flat Earth and the lands beyond and the ice wall and everything else. So, all right, now going back to we just kind of zoomed in on this graphic here a little bit. Going back to the graphic, the ionosphere, if you guys don't know what the ionosphere is, you should look it up, but it's nicely placed in the graphic that's on the screen right now. The ionosphere is where both our sun and our moon are located. It's also more than likely, if not definitive, that both the sun and the moon were made in the ionosphere. Okay, that is the section of our atmosphere that the sun and the moon both reside in and were formed. We're going to talk more about that as we go forward too. So again, so far looking at our graphic, we have a flat plane, we have a central vortex. Our known world in the blue is just a small portion of the greater realm that we occupy. From the central vortex, we have some sort of radiation being shot up from some sort of electromagnetic source underneath the greater realm, goes up, bounces off the firmament, and gives us what we need to power the sun and the moon, which we'll talk about in a little while too. Now we're going to move topics just a little bit. Now that you have a better understanding of what we live on and the various different things that are going on under the celestial dome, we're going to talk about what the moon is. Most people think right now the moon is a round rock in space, in outer space, ETD. That's not what the moon is. It's actually not even close to that. And we're going to look at evidentiary statements today, as well as other logical thoughts to show you what we believe the moon is and back those things up with fact instead of fiction like we have from NASA. So let's take a little bit closer of a look at the moon. First of all, I went over this in Telegram probably about 4 or 5 nights ago for those of you that aren't on Telegram. What we know about spherical objects is that when a light source hits a spherical object, the spherical object, it does not reflect light. So when you look at the moon photo that's on the right-hand side of your screen versus the graphic, the black and white graphic that's on the left, when you shine a light at a spherical object, you are going to have what's called a highlight point. That is what happens on a sphere. It could be from any size light source versus any size sphere. A larger sphere, a smaller sphere, a larger light source, or a smaller light source makes no difference. Doesn't even matter the difference. The distance, rather, away from one another, the light source to the sphere. You will always have a highlight point. You will always have a hot spot. That is just how a sphere operates. Doesn't matter the color, doesn't matter anything. It just, when you have a light source hitting a sphere, there is a highlight point. What we don't see on the moon ever is a highlight point. Ever. The moon simply does not behave like a sphere. It doesn't. And the reason is because it's not a sphere. I just put some different photos of the moon on the screen. Just, went to Google, DuckDuckGo, and took some photos out of there. And you could see at all times the moon is lit. When it's in its full phase, the entire moon is lit. Even when it's only half full, the entire half of the moon is lit. There is never a highlight point, ever. That is against every single thing known to man about a spherical object and the light. This is the only case you will ever see, the only example of that you will ever see in your entire life when you have a sphere and a light. This is the only time you will never see a highlight point, and that's on the moon. And the liars of the world don't want to tell you the truth about that. They would rather just really not talk about it, and you know what they do? They laugh. They laugh at you. They don't try to correct the record. They just think you're an idiot. And they call you names. Well, we're the ones showing facts. They're the ones calling names. So who do you think's telling the truth? No highlight point. You will never see a photo of the moon with a highlight point, ever. And that is against the laws of everything, of physics known to man. So what is the moon then? We should know by now, and we haven't even gotten any further into this, but as we go throughout the night tonight, your mind is going to explode, I think, especially if you haven't seen any of this stuff yet. Let's look closely at the moon. Closely. I want you to look at this photo that's on the screen right now of this object, this circular object, and ask yourself, what do you see? What is there that you see? What are we looking at? Are we looking at craters? I see a very small circle in the upper quadrant of the moon, almost in the middle, but more to the left. And from that small white circle, I see these big, long stretches of, they almost look like legs. It almost looks like it's they're like rays shooting off of that circle. You guys see that? A lot of people over in the chat are saying scarring. A lot of people over in the chat are saying a vortex reflection. Somebody just said it looks like a light grid. The smart ones, of course, are saying a reflection of the earth. Somebody else said light and dark. You're right. It's all of those things. We see all of those things, right? But look a little bit closer. All this is a zoomed in picture of the picture before. Look closer. Now that we zoomed in just a little ways, let's look closer at the moon. See anything different yet? Let's look even closer. How about we focus on this section down here, in the bottom left center of the moon? Can we see anything there that strikes us as odd, or do we see anything that maybe might look familiar to us from somewhere else? What do you see? People over in the chat are saying clouds, ice wall, map, beach ball, continents. People are saying they could see through it. White dot, old map, Spain. That one's on to something. Letters, copy of Earth. Well, how about if I do this? Can you see it now? On the left-hand side of the screen, I think no one could argue that we have the same image that we had up before. This one is a little bit more contrasted to show you the dark spots of the moon versus the lighter spots. And we also flipped it. We inverted it, and we also flipped it the other way. So before, the landmass that I was talking about was on the bottom left. Now it's on the right. You can see that, right? How about if I do this to the moon? How about if I apply some color in the area of where the white on the moon is, where the whitish gray? And how about if I put some green, a couple different shades of green on the craters of the moon? What if I put some dark green where there's some elevation? And what if I put some light green where there's some lower areas? And how about if I look at that blue picture on the right-hand side, the blue and the green? How about if I look at the red concentric circles on the right-hand part of the blue circle? See those red lines? They're faint, but I think you guys could see them, right? How about if I do this? How about if I zoom in on all of those circles? How many circles we got there? 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 circles. Interesting. Interesting that there's 4 circles, concentric circles, right around the center point there. Do you see it yet? Starting to become a little bit more clear to you now, isn't it? How about if I do this? How about now? You see it now? Boy. Now, obviously Sergio's put some little letters here on the screen over some of the green parts and some other letters in blue over the blue parts, and he's labeled them with such words that remind me of words that I have known my entire life, right? Russia, Siberia, Indian Ocean, Australia, Mexico, United States, Canada, Hudson Bay, Gulf of Mexico. Look at all this. Look at all this. What's this here? The West Sahara Desert. Look at that elevation there for the Sahara Desert on the left-hand side of your screen. Right above Nigeria, to the west of Morocco. It's interesting that the Western Sahara Desert has different elevation on our world, does it not? Look over there in Australia, New Zealand. I know we got a lot of Aussies that watch my lives. Check out where the elevations are in Australia. Look at where the Australian desert is. Look at New Zealand. Can any glober, and I'm just asking. I'm just raising the question. That's all. Can any glober, if you believe in the globe theory and you're here, and I know there's a lot of you that are here right now watching this, can any glober try to just a little bit explain to me how these masses that we see on our screen could at all be in any sort of order anywhere near how these masses are on the moon? How is that? I mean, I've been waiting for that explanation for years and years now. I just want someone to tell me how. Now let's go back a few slides. On the left of your screen, again, you are looking at the moon. And again, we flipped it once, we flipped it upside down, then we flipped it again, left to right. And you are looking at the craters of the moon on the left. You can see it's disturbed surface in the white and the darker sections in black. Now, where the red concentric circles are on the right-hand side of the screen, I mean, I'm just looking at them, and how could that be? You're telling me that random cosmic objects at some point in time struck our moon, and when they were struck, they formed the exact craters in the exact spots of the moon that reflect the continents of our known lands on Earth perfectly? I mean, I'm trying to think of what the odds are of that. The odds of asteroids, meteors, whatever, striking the moon and forming our lands on the surface of the moon reflected perfectly accurate on the moon as we have it on Earth. Let's go back to where we were. I think I'm going to have to get out of full screen mode here for a second because this isn't going to play unless I do. And I need this to play. So let me just escape here real quick. All right, we're going to play a quick little video here for you guys. Look at those distances. Exact distances. Time zones. There's the sun going around our realm, our known lands, as we should say. The only map we have, the only accurate map we have. I mean, to call that a coincidence it's beyond anything a coincidence could ever be, right? Is it not? Let's play that one more time. I want you guys to focus on the measurements on the screen. The lines are going to come up in purple. And I know it's a little blurry and I know the quality is not great, but if you want to zoom into it, you should be able to see it. Let's focus on those purple lines. And I know they go very, very quick, but let's look at that again. Distances and flights. So according to this, if you looked at that one big line that was going across the moon, both vertically and horizontally, from end to end, that is 50,000 kilometers. 50,000 kilometers. That is enormous. And that's not just of our known lands. That's of the entire realm. North to south, east to west. 50,000 kilometers. We think of Earth as massive until you hear that measurement. So the reason why on the screen right now you could see our moon is an accurate map of our flat realm, the only accurate map we have, and we can precisely plot distances, time zones, and flight patterns. Now here's the thing. If you look at flight patterns, the maps that we go off of, that the liars spoon feed to us, are not accurate maps that we could plot flight patterns with. In fact, if you look it up, and I didn't include it in the show tonight, but if you look it up, you will see that the military does not use the global Earth map. The military goes off of the flat Earth map. We're going to talk a little bit more about the flat Earth map as we go. For right now, I just want everyone to think here real quick. And I know we didn't get into, well, why are the lands of Earth reflected on the moon, Phil? We're going to talk about that. We're going to get there. I just want everyone for right now to envision a scenario where you have lived all of these days that you've been on Earth. Some of you 20 some years, some of you 50 some of you 70 some. And every day you walked outside, every day that you ever walked outside, the moon was in the sky, and you looked up at it and you didn't think twice, did you? You never even thought twice. You're like, oh yeah, there's the moon. No one ever questioned why the face of the moon never changes. No one ever questioned that. Why? Why didn't anyone ever say, well, how come the same craters are there from the very first time we saw the moon? Why is the moon not getting hit with anything else? Why is the face of the moon never changing? Why aren't some of the craters becoming filled in? Why aren't there other high points on the moon? No one ever made any of those questions. Just looked up at it, saw it every day, and that was it. Right? Maybe it's time we start asking some questions. I'm asking the questions. Let's go on to the next. That's where we just were, right? Let's watch another quick little video here. That's our Earth right there in the shaded section. There's our sun going around our flat plane. I'll play it one more time. It's just another video very similar to the last one. This is our Earth in the mirror right there. So I think by now, just so far we've gone over really only a theory that we live on a flat plane, central vortex, dome over the top, with some sort of electromagnetic energy being pumped into the planet at all times. We're going to talk about what causes a partial moon. We're going to talk about all that stuff. One thing at a time. What I want you guys to do is, if you're very interested in this, which it seems like you are because the audience is only going up and not dropping, so that usually means that I'm talking about something that people are interested in. If you're interested in this, stay with me. Let's not get too far ahead. Let's not worry about the moon phases yet. We are certainly going to talk about the moon phases. Absolutely. But right now, let's focus on where we're at. Okay? We looked at the moon. We looked at it closely. We realize now that these land masses on the moon are continents on Earth. Right? I mean, how could we deny this? But what about this? So you mean to tell me that we could land on it? We could land on it as if it's like an object? So if we're to believe that we actually could send a spaceship there and actually land on the moon, we then have to believe that the craters that we just saw that are in the exact formation of the continents, they must have happened naturally. You know, I find that hard to believe, that at all of our continents on Earth are in the exact formation as those craters on the moon. I would have to believe that in order for me to also believe that these astronauts landed on the moon, right? So now we're going down a huge rabbit hole. And if you're still with me, pay attention, because it gets way worse or better, however you want to take it. Let's take a look at NASA. Now that we're questioning the moon landing and if it's even possible to land on this, let's take a look at this NASA. First, I want to look at the logo on the right-hand side of the screen, NASA. NASA. National Aeronautics and Space Association. Is that what it is? Whatever, who gives a shit? Do you ever notice that, and I'm sure you guys know this because it was made very popular in movies. In fact, how many movies that involve some sort of space travel have you heard T-minus? Every one of them, right? How many of you have used T-minus as a catchphrase? You know, I'll be out in T-minus 10, 9, 8, right? How many of you have said it? How many of you recognize it as soon as it's heard, right? It's because before Challenger, we heard it. Before, all the Apollos, we heard it. NASA says T-minus, and then they start their countdown, right? Why T-minus? What the hell does T-minus mean? Because it has no actual explanation. It doesn't mean anything. That's just what they say, right? Shit. Well, look at that. If we just rearrange some letters in that NASA word and we add a T, instead of minusing a T, shit, look what happened. T minus. So if we take out the T, is that what they meant? So NASA minus T is Satan? T minus? Well, maybe I'm just losing it. Maybe these are just all coincidences that could easily be explained. But now that I look a little closer at the NASA logo, I see the letters, obviously, and I see that odd-looking swirl in the middle. Looks like it's going in a loop. But I also see that red thing, which never really struck me as anything to do with space. You would think like a space logo would have a little bit more spacey stuff in it instead of just some fake stars and, a circle. But then if I look closer at that logo, I just, I can't help but notice that it looks like the tongue of a serpent. So NASA is Satan minus a T, and also the snake that encouraged Eve to eat the forbidden fruit. The snake's tongue is also part of the logo? All right, wait a minute, because Phil, first you're telling me that the craters on the moon are actually continents on Earth, and they're exactly the same spot in each, even down to the exact measurement for not only time zones, but also flight paths, and also the exact mileage from, let's say, Australia to London. But now also NASA's logo is evil? Well, that makes sense, because if NASA is lying about their space mission, where'd all that money go? I don't know if you guys know this or not, but there is trillions of dollars that's been paid to NASA since 1958. Trillions with a T of our money. NASA's budgeted every single year. So we're paying money to a space organization that has obvious references to Satan. You ever heard of hiding it in plain sight? No more plain than that, right? Wow. So we just look at those logos side by side again. You could see that. I mean, it's not just a nice little red ribbon. It's quite different than that. NASA is a lie, ladies and gentlemen. Any proof that any person who believes in global Earth will ever show you is a photo from NASA. NASA has been nothing but a very expensive Photoshop tutorial. And I could go on all day about NASA. I could do a whole live just on NASA, which I may do as a branch off of this live. But, man, so many coincidences here, huh? Now, why lie? Obviously, one of the biggest reasons that people lie just in general is money. It's rooted somehow in money. So I would think that NASA, they could get trillions of dollars over a 50 or 60 year time period, which they have. I would think that NASA has a vetted interest in lying to get that money. But why else? Why else would NASA fake this whole thing, fake the moon? And we're not even talking about, planets and space exploration yet. We will. But why fake the moon? Because obviously the moon is not what they say it is. So why lie about that? What are they, just for money? I don't know about that. I think it must be something more than just money. And I want you guys to know something too. The budget that gets given to NASA on an annual basis from the government is our money. You pay that. You pay for these satanic references, T-minus, serpent tongue. You pay it. We fund it. We fund the lie. And then they throw the lie right back in your face. Every day you walk out and you look up at that moon, there it is. There's no highlight point in that moon, even though a light source is hitting a sphere. Where's the highlight point? Forget the highlight point. How on earth, or how on the moon, can the continents of Earth be seen on the moon in the exact proportions that they are on Earth? And then we start looking at the source of who tells us that those are craters, and we notice that the source is some sort of satanic reference. How stupid have we been? Can we get any more dumbed down than we currently are? You learn about the globe in first or second grade, and you learn about land and oceans, and 70-some% of the Earth is covered by oceans, and there's land masses, and we are a planet. Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. Blah, blah, blah. You can spit it out. You learn it once. That's it. That's it. They got you. You learned it early. They got you. We landed on the moon. We will put a man on the moon. Sputnik and Apollo and yay, let's go. They teach it to you once at a young age and you are hooked for life. Let's talk a little bit more about this. I want to get a little further into this. Professor R. Foster claimed in 1965 that the moon was likely made of plasma and that it would be impossible to land on it. This is just a short few years before we landed on the moon, before NASA landed on the moon, I should say, right? Put an end to the space race, threw Russia into oblivion. Of course the United States got to the moon first. Russia never was going to get to the moon. You know why? Because you can't. So of course the United States won the space race. Of course Russia lost. They were never going to get there to begin with. That space race, did you see what it did to Russia economically after the United States claimed to land on it? Whew. One small step for man, huh? How many of those astronauts have been in the Freemasons? Did you ever look them up? Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, the rest of them? Look them up. Let me know what you see. Check out some of the photos that are widely spread of Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin. Tell me what ring they're wearing, what logo's on there. Nice little homework assignment for you guys. So R. Foster claimed in 1965 that we're not going to land there. Not going to land there at all. Let's hear from him.
What is your theory? Well, it is by now rather more than this theory. 10 or 11 years ago, I stated to various scientists that the moon is not a piece of rock, but it is a plasma phenomenon, cosmic plasma, and that this fact will eventually be confirmed. I made certain predictions which were already confirmed in 1958, and the situation now is coming close to a complete confirmation. Scientific views expressed all over the world now that the moon seems to be of a quite different nature from what was assumed.
The Americans and Russians are thinking of landing then on it.
Well, that will never happen. Not on the moon. On Mars, on Venus, on other planets, yes, but the moon is definitely, as I said, the plasma.
Wait a second. I have a question. If the moon is plasma, Mr. Foster, how would we land on Mars and Venus and other planets? If they're lying about the moon and going to the moon, why are we talking about going to other planets? Don't we think that maybe if one is a lie, then the rest could be lies? Right at the end there, I don't know if you caught that, but we're gonna play it one more time, and I want you to listen at the end.
What is your theory?
Well, it is by now rather more than this theory. 10 or 11 years ago, I stated to various scientists that the moon is not a piece of rock, but it is a plasma phenomenon, cosmic plasma, and that this fact will eventually be confirmed. I made certain predictions which were already confirmed in 1958, and the situation now is coming close to a complete confirmation. Scientific views expressed all over the world now that
here it comes.
Seems to be of a quite different nature from what was assumed.
The Americans and Russians are thinking of landing then on it.
Well, that will never happen. Not on the moon. On Mars, on Venus, on other planets, yes, but the moon is definitely, as I said, the plasma.
That strikes me as odd, because if it's plasma and they're saying that it's not plasma, and we've already, at this point in 1965, we've already, established that it is a rock in space, as are other planets, according to the liars in NASA. How can we land on other planets? So, gets interesting after here. R. Foster was claiming that the moon is plasma, cannot be landed on, but other planets may be. Shortly after this, and word started getting out. Keep in mind, this isn't the social media age, that it is now. It wasn't that back then. Shortly after, Foster was debunked and proved wrong in his moon theory. They debunked him. They said, you know what? That's not plasma. We know, we've been there. So he was debunked, kind of like election fraud. That was debunked, right? No fraud. Safest election. We know it was the safest election just 24 hours after. Yep. Same thing with Foster. He was debunked. But if you focus a little bit more on what Foster said, it's likely that Foster was some sort of controlled opposition. What do I mean by that? He said that you can land on other planets. So it's most likely that this guy was actually told to tell people, especially the reporter that was reporting this, that you can't land on the moon. It's plasma. The other planets, yeah, you could do that. So it gives them a shred of credibility. What they do there is they put in an ounce of truth, just an ounce, right? And then they fill it up with lies. So in Foster's case, the ounce of truth was the moon is plasma. That's the ounce of truth. This is what they do. This is what the cabal does. The moon is plasma. That was true. The lies are, you can land on other planets. So then what they do is they debunk it. They debunk it. It was proven wrong. Foster's a crazy guy. You know what happened to this guy afterwards? Look that up. Look it up. A little bit more homework for you. They mix in the truth with a bunch of lies. Yeah, you can land on other planets. Sure, we could definitely do that. But the moon's plasma. Moon, plasma, true. Land on other planets, false. Then he gets debunked. You can land on the moon. We've been there. Haha. Oh boy. When was the moon formed? Let's keep talking about the moon a little bit. I want to talk about what we actually saw on the moon. And this photo is obviously it's a little different than the photos we've seen so far. This, when you look up in the sky, this isn't what you see. This is more akin to almost an X-ray photo of the moon. Interesting, X-ray photo of the moon. We talked about X-rays a little bit earlier in the central vortex. Let's pause on that for a bit. Let's keep going. Keep in mind, we're going in order here. Okay, so stay with me. Don't get too far ahead. Don't be asking questions that we're not there yet. Stay in the moment. In the moment. Audience keeps ticking up. So we're turning some heads tonight, ladies and gentlemen, because if we start talking about bullshit, people smell the bullshit and they stop watching the live. But those numbers are going up. You know why? Because we're actually showing people the truth. And people like the truth. Especially nowadays. Let's keep going. The moon is not an active reflection, but instead a permanently recorded point in time. What do I mean by that? This isn't an active reflection, so the moon's not actually a mirror? If it's not a mirror, how are the lands there? Like, we know the continents are there. There they are, right-hand side of the screen. We see them. I can see Australia right now. I can see New Zealand. I can see Russia, China. I can even see the United States. But it can't be an active reflection. And let's talk about why. We know that it's not an active reflection because of this particular landmass. You can see right where the white arrow is pointing. That is depicted on the moon map. It's not there. If you try to travel there, from Australia or New Zealand or any of those that are down near that continent, it's not there. There's no continent there, which is probably one reason why the moon map idea or theory, maybe this dismissed it for some people that were looking at continents. That giant crater right there is called Lemuria. It was a continent on the Earth at some point in time. Is it there right now? No. How do we know that? Because we could travel there. And all that's there is ocean. There's no continent right where that arrow is. Have you guys ever heard of Lemuria? Now, this screenshot is from Iwaranan's rendition of his Flat Earth segment, and he spells it Lemuria, Lumeria. Other people spell it different ways. It could be Lemyra. Look it up. If you do a search on it, you'll find a couple different ways to spell it. That was Iwar's spelling, but Iwar is he's not Native American. So let's talk a little bit about Lemuria. First of all, let's look at it. You can see how I spelled it up top. If you go to the internet, this is the most common spelling. And you can see that on the Sturgios maps, which are now on the screen, the green and blue map that you see, Sturgios spells it Lemuria too, that way. So you could really learn about it any way if you wanted to. But there's the continent. You can see on the photo on the left-hand side of the screen where Australia is and where New Zealand is in proximity to Lemuria. Okay? If we zoom in on Lemuria, you could see the exactly what it looks like on the moon map, which is the photo on the right-hand side of the screen. All right? So this is how we know that the depictions that are on the moon map are not current, because this landmass does not exist. If we zoom out on the moon map and we look at Sturgios's map, and all Sturgios did here was, and I don't say it in the way that I just said it, I don't mean all he did, like there was just a little bit. This took a lot of time and a lot of effort to take the moon's craters, shade them in different colors with elevations based on what the craters are, and this is a lot of work he did. But if we zoom out on his map, you could see where that crater is associated with Lemuria, as associated with the craters on the moon. Okay. Interestingly enough, huge structures were found on the ocean floor in this area, including pyramids, castles, and other man-made structures. This is just one of the underwater photos that were taken from scuba divers. Huge structures are right there. Lemuria sunk. It was a sunken continent, much like Atlantis. Lemuria is not Atlantis. Lemuria is a different sunken continent. Atlantis was a sunken city, which some people argue was a continent, but I think the confusion gets laid in there that Lemuria is Atlantis, Atlantis is Lemuria, because, obviously it's sunk and blah, blah, blah. This is different. Much different. You could see that the exact point of this discovery, in terms of the underground pyramids and the castles and everything else, this exact point of this discovery is exactly where Lemuria is depicted on the moon map. Exactly. Just off the coast of Japan. You can see where Japan is in proximity, where Australia is in proximity, and where New Zealand is in proximity. This island sunk. Continent, I should say, not island. Enough about Lemuria. Let's talk a little bit about how the moon was formed. Because I think even some people that were watching tonight that came into this thinking that this is all bullshit, I think your mind is starting to play tricks on you now. Your cognitive dissonance may be kicking in a little bit, and your mind is telling you, this can't be. This is something that I believed in my entire life. It was right there in my face. This is a lie. This is just another lie. These flat earthers, and then you start throwing in insults and curses, right? And names. Don't let your cognitive dissonance bring you down. Stay here. Stay here. Don't go all out here and do this. Stay right here, because they've lied to you. And they've lied to you for so many reasons. And we're going to enumerate all those reasons. Might not get to that tonight, probably be tomorrow, but all they did was lie about everything. And it continues in our geopolitical climate today. The election fraud, Biden, and the Federal Reserve, and we could go on and on and on and on about all the shit that they lied about, right? Me personally, I get pissed. Pissed. Because we are slaves. We are information slaves. Let's talk about how the moon formed. Because at this point, I think all of you, even the ones that I just mentioned, are probably now realizing that the moon is not a rock in space. You're probably now realizing that it's not a sphere. It can't be a sphere. There's no hot spot. There's no highlight point. And you're probably realizing that it has something to do with Earth. Right? You're probably realizing that, but what is it then? How was it formed? We have R. Foster telling us that, it's most likely plasma. What's this? Let's see who gets it first. I'm looking at right now the Rumble chat. What is this? What is this logo? I'll give you a shout out if you get it first over here in the Rumble chat. What is that? It's a prism, yeah, but what is it? Tell me what it is. White light, yeah, it's that. Oh, Pink Floyd, there you go. MF Music, out of all people. Pink Floyd, what's the, oh, there you go, who's that? Kat Guthrin, Kathy Gruen? Kathy Gruen said Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon. So that's the logo from Pink Floyd's album, Dark Side of the Moon. Well, isn't that something? Isn't that something? Oh, you don't know what the something is yet, huh? Okay, let's keep watching. The moon was formed in the ionosphere, which is the photo 2 slides back, by reflecting X-rays bouncing off the firmament and burning, or something similar, a permanent image of our greater realm into the plasma layer of the ionosphere. What the hell does that mean, Phil? Let me read it again now that we have a different graphic on the screen. The moon was formed in the ionosphere, which is a section of our atmosphere. By the way, guys, this is just a rubber band that I'm playing with. So that no one get nervous. It's just a rubber band. It was on one of these wires. It's nothing. It's nothing. Okay. The moon was formed in the ionosphere, which is the area of our atmosphere on Earth, right? By the way, we're going to talk in detail about the ionosphere in the next slide. By reflecting X-rays bouncing off the firmament. You remember, right? Earlier in the live, we talked about how X-rays bounce off a crystal-like substance, how they're reflected. Lawrence Bragg, look that up. Look up that law. It's pretty interesting. So the X-rays are coming from the central vortex in our flat realm, getting shot up into and through the ionosphere. They go through the ionosphere. They hit the crystal-like firmament, and they get reflected downwards. And at this moment, at some point in time, a long time ago, the moon was formed. The X-rays were so powerful from this jolt of energy. Some might call it a Big Bang. But it wasn't nothing exploded nothing and then everything formed from nothing. That was caused by nothing. That's not what the Big Bang was. Maybe the Big Bang was actually this jolt of radiation or X-rays that came up from our greater realm, which was already there, by the way, and made our luminary, the moon. We'll talk about the sun another time. We're not going to talk about that right now. But can you imagine that Pink Floyd pretty much depicted some sort of white beam on the left-hand side of this logo going through Doesn't that kind of look like what we're talking about with this? Where is it? This? Maybe that's how the moon was made? What did Pink Floyd know? What were they into? Who told them what the... How could you name that album Dark Side of the Moon? And yet the logo depicts what a very likely cause of how the moon was made. It depicts what it is? And he named it Dark Side of the Moon? Wait, so you're telling me that, again, I have to yet again believe that that's a coincidence? So the continents, place in the moon in proportion to the Earth's continents, that's coincidence. The NASA logo with the serpent tongue, that's coincidence. It's just a red ribbon. The NASA name without a T, rearranged, Satan, T minus is the launch code. That's a coincidence. Wow, I really have to believe a lot of coincidences here, do I not? R. Foster says in 1965, several years before the moon landing, that the moon cannot be landed on. Then he gets dismissed as a quack. and dies, it's probably a coincidence. Okay. Well, you have the right to believe in coincidences. It's fine. But I think we deserve to know why we're being lied to if you don't believe that those are all coincidences. Let's take a closer look at the images that we see on the moon. Now that we know what we know, and that the moon is not this rock that was hit by craters and all this bullshit, let's look at the images, okay? Because what you see on the moon is actually two images taken from two different angles at two different points in time. The image we see on the moon is a composite image, i.e., it is two images put together from different angles to make one single image. The image on the left, the bottom left of your screen, the first image is the land masses on Earth. That is the land masses. The oceans are darkened. We're going to talk about the ice in a little while. I know you probably have questions about, well, where's the ice wall? Okay, we'll talk about that in a bit. Just hold on. And then the second image, what the hell is that thing? Because that's not land masses. Remember that little white dot we talked about that looked like it had rays coming from it? It's called Techo. That's what the liars call it. They're obsessed with it. They are completely obsessed with that crater. They call it a crater. It's not a crater, obviously. They're obsessed with it. That's not a landmass on Earth, right? And it doesn't appear to be a crater because the craters on the moon are dark, right? But that second little, what appears to be a crater is white. And it has white rays jetting from it in every direction. So what the heck is that thing? The second image that you see on the right-hand side of the screen is the firmament. And the circular area that you see in the top right of that image is the apex of the firmament. That is the apex. That is the very top center of the firmament. That is the exact spot that the enormous wave of radiation went up, hit the firmament, came back down. And that is why you see those rays jetting off from that image. The first image on the left is your land. We've proven that beyond the shadow of a doubt. And if anybody can prove otherwise, I'm willing to pay you $10,000. I would like a logical explanation as to how those craters on the moon are perfectly in proportion to the land masses on our Earth. And I can't see how anyone could ever do it. The image on the right is a composite. The whole moon is a composite of two different images. The firmament as well as the land masses on Earth. You can even see some stars on that image on the right. The stars that we see above us, our celestial stars, are inside of the firmament. That image is of our firmament, and the spot with the circular area is the apex of the firmament. It is off center, so to speak, because it's a different angle. We'll talk about more about that tomorrow. What I want to look at now, though, is what we see on the moon, because they say that they're craters. Okay. Craters, huh? Craters on the moon are likely some sort of plasma emulsion, akin to bubbling, such as urethane paint defects. Do you guys look at those three pictures on the bottom? Did any of you guys look at those and think, oh yeah, those are craters on the moon? Nah. That's just urethane. When you put urethane over concrete or urethane over whatever material you put it over, and it bubbles because temperature is wrong, those are bubbles in urethane. Look pretty much like craters on the moon to me, don't they? Maybe that R. Foster guy was onto something when he said the moon's plasma, because plasma could create bubbles and bubbling. Interesting. I know craters is spelled wrong. Don't care. Here's a picture of the moon. Geez, if I look at that picture of the moon, and then I do one of these, son of a bee. Don't they look awfully similar? Circular size, differentiating sizes. Wow. Maybe these aren't craters after all. I think we should start calling them bubbles. They bubbled. They bubbled up in the plasma. Much more likely. Here's a question. Why could we see stars through the moon's shadow? What do I mean by that? Let's take a look here. Why is that star right there? Where's the highlight point of the moon? Why does the moon appear to be transparent right there? So that's the Earth's shadow? Okay, what if we do this? What if we take the half phase? Let me see if I can pause this here. Shit, I lost it. Here, let me go back. I'm going to start it over again because I missed it. I want that last image to show you guys what was actually happening there. I'm going to hit pause once it comes up. Here's the blue transparency. Supposed to be a shadow, right? Yeah, okay. Here's the one. So this is a picture of the moon when it's at its half phase. And if you take that image and you darken it and lighten it, all those little white spots that you see on the screen right now, those are stars. Those are stars. So can someone explain to me how the stars are in the dark section of where the moon should be? Because we recognize that. We obviously know that that's half of a moon, right? We see that. I mean, it's obvious. I think it's obvious. It's half the moon. But in the other half, where you can't see the moon because of the Earth's shadow, or whatever lie they're going to put through you, how could you see a star through the moon? I mean, I'm just asking questions. I don't know what the answer is. What I do know is what the answer is not. And the answer is not that the moon is a rock, because the moon cannot be a rock and be transparent, because it is very clearly transparent just by the image you see on the screen right now in this video. Those little white dots are stars. And you could see stars through the moon's surface. Now we got stars. You can see stars through the moon's surface. The moon doesn't have a highlight point or a hot spot, even though it has to, since it's a sphere and light is hitting it from the sun, apparently. You could see the continents of the known lands on the Earth in the exact proportions that they are on the craters of the moon. NASA's logo has a serpent tongue, T-, no T in the word NASA, Satan. How much more do we have to endure of this lie before everybody wakes the hell up? I'm not done yet even. Not even done yet. We live, ladies and gentlemen, on a perfect clock. A perfect clock. we're going to talk much more about that perfect clock in tomorrow's live. But before we do, it is not just a perfect clock. It is God's clock. And that is how it ticks. Tick, tock, tick, tock. Want to see it again? Concentric white circles in the bottom right-hand part of the screen over the green lands are from outermost point in the Antarctic Circle, which is actually an ice wall, the Tropic of Capricorn, the equator, and the Tropic of Cancer. And that is how they move. And then the circle in the very middle is the Arctic Circle. We live on God's clock, and it is perfect. We're going to go over the rest tomorrow. This was a long live as it is. Tomorrow will be just as long. I'm going to do it at the same time, 7 p.m. I don't anticipate any issues tomorrow because I'll have a camera for this. That's what really slowed me down tonight. Audio was good tonight. I know that. Want to give a shout out to two of my sponsors for tonight. Number one, TacRite. TacRite has the military grade goggles back in stock. If you're on Rumble or Locals, the link is below. It's TacRiteFill.com. They are finally back in stock. These things sell out as soon as they come in. Get your butt over to TacRite and grab a pair. They're a great birthday present. They're great for the outdoorsman. Terrific product. And I think you guys will really, really like them. One more sponsor that I have is a new sponsor that I've, you know what, let me shut off screen share here real quick. Solo, there we go. One other sponsor that I have is a new sponsor that I have not read anything on just yet. A lot of us, myself included, as you get older in life, beyond 30, beyond 40, and into your 50s, you have very, very low testosterone problems. I've experienced that. All of these old testosterone products that we've tried in the past fail to build muscle, and they enhance intimacy and performance. The studied ingredients in Force, which is the product I'm introducing you to tonight, have been shown to power up testosterone for lean muscle, weight loss, and enhanced intimacy. But here's the kicker. They power up natural growth hormone, and that's the performance difference maker. Force is total performance. If you get started today, you could get 15% off and free rush shipping if you go to brickhouseforce.com and enter code BOOSTFILL. brickhouseforce.com and enter code BOOSTFILL. The link for that is also in the description below, underneath Rumble and underneath Locals. Should also be on Twitter too, but if you can't find it there, I will put all these links back in the Telegram channel, the announcements channel for you guys to get as well. Same time tomorrow, 7 p.m. I'm going to do the second half of this. The second half, the first half is kind of the introductory half. The second half is going to blow your mind. It's going to blow your mind right off the wazoo. Now, if you're already blown away by where the lands are versus, you know, how they are on Earth and on the moon and everything else, wait till you see tomorrow and how our Earth actually operates and the lengths that these scumbags have gone to keep the truth from each and every one of you. And I am here to finally shut them down, hopefully, because we are reaching a lot of people. So, love you guys. See you tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern is going to be the time for the live. And be sure to check out those sponsors. Oh, by the way, one more thing. Tomorrow, I'm going to have a way for you and anyone you need to access unvaccinated blood. Unvaccinated blood for anything you need, whether it's a surgery, transfusion, whatever it may be. Unvaccinated blood. The hospitals will not give it to you. I found the way to get it to you. Tomorrow, I will make that announcement. I'll launch the website. show you guys exactly how to get it, what to do. Very, very small financial investments to get your name on the list and be featured on the website. Comes with a lot of little perks too. I think you guys are really going to like it. So tomorrow we'll talk about that before the live. We'll get into the second half of the Lands Beyond. We'll talk more about the Lands Beyond because, like I said, tonight was more of an introductory to this whole thing. And once we get to tomorrow's live, it's going to be more about what actually is hidden. See you guys then. Love you guys. Thanks for tuning in.